Hello, March 17th, 2010. Didn't sleep very much at all last night. I was thinking about many things. And I was thinking about what to title this video. Timing is everything. Upcoming wars. But what I'm going to title it is, what is truth? You know, the age-old question, what is truth? I think Jesus was asked that in the Bible. And actually, I think all thinking people should ask themselves that. Particularly nowadays, what is truth? Conversely, what is deception? What are lies? And all of us, things must come to mind. That person lied to me. That person told me the truth. That was a true book. That wasn't a true book. I mean, it's interesting, like even a library, you have truth and fiction. And ever since I was a child, I have never been interested in fiction. And I still have virtually no interest at all in fiction. The only way I have interest in books of fiction is if they apply to how people think and how they perceive the truth. And so in my view, truth is a knowledge of reality, what's really going on. And I know there's many people, because I've read widely, and talked to a lot of people that believe that, well, truth is relative, or it's subjective, or there's different realities. Well, I don't buy that for 1 second. I fully comprehend that there's different energy levels, different vibration levels, different frequency levels. But the truth is truth. So, for instance, I was thinking here in the United States, and I always forget, but I was reminded today is St. Patrick's Day in the United States. The Irish, they had some dancing on TV here on one of the local stations, and I guess I could carry that. So, you know, people could say, well, no, St. Patrick's Day, it's just their perception. It's not really happening in the United States today. Well, that would be a lie. That would be a falsehood, because it actually is happening. Or somebody could go, you know, on a heavy acid trip or whatever, be on some kind of, in an altered state, and they say, you know what, my reality is it's not St. Patrick's Day in the United States. Nobody will be wearing green today. So, actually, I'll say this with high confidence, the whole world could be saying that, yet that would be a lie, because today is St. Patrick's Day. People will be wearing green here in the United States. For sure. How do I know that? From knowledge. From knowledge of the past, because I've seen it happen all my life. Even when I lived in Argentina, there'd be Americans that would wear green on St. Patrick's Day because to honor St. Patrick's Day. So I'm trying to give an example, I guess, of what truth is. The reason I know that there'll be people wearing green today is because I've experienced that in the past. Things could change all of a sudden, and then St. Patrick's Day a year from now, maybe nobody would wear green, but it would take some massive changes. Today, people already have green on, and that is a fact of life. So truth is a knowledge of reality. And truth, it really frequently has nothing to do with popularity. If you think of the history of the world or history books, and that's why sometimes, for me, I'm grateful I grew up in Argentina. People that go to different countries and read widely or read the history of different countries can start to begin to understand this. It's pretty intense, but I remember the Falkland War, you know, and I lived in Argentina 6 years of my life. So I understood the Argentine position to a certain degree. Whereas the Americans and the British, you know, are down there. They had their side, and I had a different viewpoint because I lived in Argentina, and I knew people that were close to that war. So when you read history books, generally, that's why I like to read from all kinds of sources. But if you read a history book, the person that conquers the country or wins the war is the person that writes the history, or the people, I should say, the people that write the history, because it's usually a collaborative effort. So if you really want to know the truth, you might need to read what researchers will call original sources. And so when somebody says, hey, this is what happened in 1850, or this is what happened in 1790, or George Washington believed like this, and there's a little blurb in a book written by somebody that's super liberal. I think, and that's a label now, super liberal. Right now, and labels change all the time. But if I really want to know about George Washington, I will do my best to look at original sources. And so people say, "Oh, Masons are horrible." Well, I'm sure some Masons are horrible, but George Washington was a Mason, and in my estimation, George Washington was not horrible. People would say, white people are horrible. Well, I'm sure in certain instances they are horrible. Indians are horrible. Shamans are horrible. Pagans are horrible. There's so many snap judgments out there, but when you really get down into it, people say, "I'm Christian, I'm this, I'm that." Well, it pretty much just gives you a headache nowadays. There's just so much information overload. So that's why I like to turn off the TV. I'll watch the TV sometimes to know what groupthink is. And that's why there's certain stations I'll watch to see what groupthink is. And there's people that I love dearly that watch a certain station or a certain person, or they'll watch Glenn Beck, and whatever Glenn Beck says they accept as truth. Glenn Beck worked with Skousen or knew Skousen, or read some of his stuff. Well, I worked with Skousen, and that's why when Glenn Beck brings up Skousen, from my perspective, I put it through the filter of what I know about Cleon Skousen. Okay? And here we go, the Harvard thing. But people say, "Oh yeah, I went to Harvard," and then I'll just kind of "Oh yeah, so what school did you go to?" And you can figure them out pretty quick. It's just I was never in the military, but people will pretend that they were airborne or Navy SEALs or whatever, and I can understand how Navy SEALs or airborne guys they can figure these bozos out like that, because I've talked to some of them and they've done some incredible stuff. They're tough as heck. So, truth, it's not a perception. It's not necessarily what's popular. It's not necessarily what a history book will tell you is right or wrong. Truth is what really is happening, what really happened, and of course there's future truth. And so as you look at the future, actually predicting or seeing the future is really actually completely scientific. And there's people that say, "Oh, I'm an atheist, I don't believe in God." Well, I think that's stupid and completely unscientific. There's a lot of labels that have to do with that. And so I would say, in my estimation, from my studies of everything, people say, "Hey, I'm Christian," or "I believe in God." Very few of those people have any clue about what Jesus Christ taught. It's a joke. All you got to do is just channel surf. You just see people like, "Oh my gosh, would Jesus be talking about this?" From what I've read, he was in the scene, he was peaceful, he was powerful. I'm sure he knew the herbs. He wasn't into prosperity and big gold watches and all that kind of bull crap. And, you just see people, "Oh, prosperity, prosperity, prosperity." I guess Jesus wasn't that hung up on it. Conversely, you'll look back in the Old Testament, and there's Solomon blessed with all kinds of things and great riches. And so, I try not to judge people whether they're rich or poor. But if they think that, hey, you got to be rich and that means you're righteous, then obviously they haven't even cracked open the Bible and realized that, hey, there's a lot of righteous people that were not rich, including the actual Son of God, Jesus Christ himself. So I was thinking about truth, a lot of other things, when the wars are going to happen, and the prophecy, and studying the past can show you when, the war with Iran, the war with Russia, with China, they're all coming. I have actually more certainty on the war with Russia and China than I do even on the war with Iran, even though the indications are massive that the war with Iran is going to happen at some point. Just you can see the ratcheting up of pressure on that, and I think it's unfortunate. And I'm sure there's tons of people who disagree with that, especially here in the United States. So, in seeking truth, following one's heart, reading widely, thinking independently, not necessarily going to school and saying, "Okay, you got to think this way," or reading this magazine or watching that TV station. "Oh, I got to think that way." And it's hard, when your loved ones, your brother, sister, your parents, your children, other people can think differently. And I would say, as a general rule, the closer you are to truth, probably the more isolated you are. That's why it's easier sometimes to just get close to like dietary truth, because you can agree that, hey, that junky hamburger fried in grease is not as good as this apple. Anyway, that's a whole nother thing. Truth in food and truth in eating. And morning mind, good job on the GMO stuff. So yeah, I have a lot on my mind. But I will just attempt to bring this all together by saying truth is what's reality. It's not relative. Truth is truth. It's real. And it's that way right now in the present moment, March 17, 2010, according to the Roman calendar. And there's other people that have other calendars which I think are more accurate. Also knowledge of the past. And if you put all this together and use this great brain that God gave us, our Heavenly Father, our Father in heaven, then it's actually pretty easy to anticipate or to see the future. God bless. We live in intense, intense times. Take care. Ciao.